everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And we finally reached feature film editions of Steven Spielberg's filmography with the Sugarland Express, and old reliable Rowan Wood here helping me out with this episode. Rowan, thanks for coming on.
Anytime. Speaking of, I was thinking, am I the one with the most appearances on this show? Because I know I only came in late with Scorsese, but I feel like I've made it up in my appearances with Scorsese and Spielberg.
I'd have to go back and actually count, but I'm pretty 100% yes.
Hell yeah. I love
it. So Rowan made a lot of headway recently. And it'll be back on next week when we talk about Jaws. Yes. But we're getting that next week. This week, Sugarland Express. But Rowan, before we jump into things, do your thing. Shamelessly plug.
Oh wow! Well, I somehow I'm always caught unawares, and I usually have to pick and choose what to promote. But I guess that my biggest thing is the Lenient Critic, my website, where I just write about movies, talk about movies, and I have a companion podcast called the Lenient Critic Podcast, where I basically do a similar thing, but it's basically an extended version. It's a conversation with some really great people. And Shane and
Alice. I just saw...
Exactly, yes. Alice was on my episode about Moon Knight and Doctor Strange. But the Wasteland Reviewer and I have a podcast coming out at some point soon, to be determined. But so just keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm sure we'll both promote it on our shows.
100%. You'll see it all over social media too. Absolutely. And we're waiting on a nice logo, which my pal Joe, who's also a part of my movie club, who, if you've watched any of those episodes, you people out there, of the Development Hell podcast, Joe's working on it. And I'll see him next week for my wedding. So if I don't get any updates by then it'll be like, Joe, where's the logo? So it's like, you will finish this right now. But we're getting there. We've recorded some episodes. We have some more to record, and it's a lot of fun. And I hope you all enjoy it when it comes around. But for now, you get to enjoy the Welcome to the Wasteland show, as I'm doing my journey through Spielberg. But if you haven't watched the show before, and even if you have, we have 3 segments on this show. We go through coming attractions, our main feature, and then some recommendations for all you wonderful folk, because you all need more crap to watch. So starting off with our coming attractions for Friday, May 20th. So, Rowan, what film are you looking forward to talking about today?
So, I've never seen Downton Abbey. Never watched the show. I've heard it's great. My parents watched it. But I work at a movie theater in a town that is mostly comprised, at least now, but pre-Memorial Day, of elderly people. And elderly people love the shit out of Downton Abbey. And so the 2019 Downton Abbey film was one of the biggest things that has ever happened to our theater. It was insane and huge. So yeah, I am going to see this new movie, Downton Abbey, A New Era, purely because I have been seeing the trailers incessantly over the last couple months, and it actually looks really delightful and really fun. And I don't know what it is, but this seems like a world that I want to immerse myself in. I don't have the time to watch the show right now, so I think what I'm going to do is watch a recap of the show, watch the first movie, and then go see the new one, because I see it for free because I work at the theater. And like, I don't know if I would pay for it, but I am honestly a little bit excited to watch it. I nailed down what it is. It's the score, the music in this trailer. This is why I never roll my eyes when the New Era trailer comes on, because I just love the soundtrack, and I love the score when the theme swells and we see this montage of just some absolutely beautiful looking things that are going to happen. It's just like, it just touches my heart and just makes me smile. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm a movie soundtrack nut, but at the same time, this just looks like a lot of fun, like totally harmless. Like nothing is actually going to happen, but it just looks like a pretty decent way to spend 2 hours. So that is what I am excited for.
I want to learn about Maggie Smith's story past.
Mysterious past.
And the British are coming. Oh my God. This movie is too British.
Yeah. They know how to make trailers, though. That's all I'll say.
It is Downton Abbey, too British, too furious. Here's the sequel. So there we go. Now, my pick is 100% Alex Garland's Men, because Alex Garland is one of my favorite, because like most of my top 10 favorite directors have a robust filmography at this point and have like a body of work, but there's a lot of directors that I love that are some of my favorites, but they've only had a few films, and Alex Garland's definitely towards the top of that list because this is his third official feature film. Did he direct Dredd? Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. Will we ever know? But this is, between the fact that Rory Keener's playing like 9 different people and has Jesse Buckley in it, who I absolutely adore, and this movie looks creepy AF. I had not watched the second trailer either. I hadn't seen it in theater. I hadn't watched it, but that first trailer sold me. I'm like, this is creepy as hell. And it's Alex Garland. So honestly, I'm like, I'm down 100%.
Yeah.
So, but also coming out this weekend is Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, which is out on Disney Plus and is getting insane reviews right now. And now I'm super excited for this too, because like, not gonna lie, it has Andy Samberg in it, which is funny. I used to hate him. Like, really? Hate him. And I guess because the only thing I really saw him in was It's My Boy.
That is fun fact, filmed like right down the road from where I am right now, which is the only reason I watched it. But also, like, what I find really hilarious about Chip 'n Dale is that it's a Lonely Island movie. It's directed by Akiva Schaffer, who's one of the members of the Lonely Island, and of course starring Andy Samberg, which just blows my mind that the Lonely Island are making a Chip 'n Dale movie for Disney Plus. That is not a sentence that I thought I would be saying like a year ago. It's great.
And that's the thing too. It's a Lonely Island movie, and look what we got with Pop Star, one of the best comedies in the 21st century. So like, I'm down. I'm ready to go. You know what? I have a feeling that this is going to have actually more surprises than Multiverse of Madness wound up having.
It's true. Like, a lot of the reviews that I've heard are like how did Disney pull off these character appearances? Like, you got to stay for the post-credit scene. It's better than Marvel did, which I just think it's just great.
You thought that the biggest Easter egg and cameo filled movie of the year that was going to bring all the joy was Multiverse of Madness, and it turns out to be Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and you thought the best multiverse movie was going to be Multiverse of Madness, and then it turned out to be Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Marvel's slacking. They're slacking.
Just there you go. What a twist of fate this year has turned into. But a film that has nothing to do with the multiverse, or chipmunks for that matter, we have the Sugarland Express. Wonderful segue. I was very impressed by my own segue there.
Your segues here are almost as good as my introductions of you in our forthcoming podcast.
There we go. And almost as good as the segues in Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Ah, yes.
There you go.
I have nothing to say.
Rowan, speechless. I'm going to have to do the rest of this episode by myself. Now, Steven Spielberg, as I've talked about so far on Welcome to the Wasteland with his short film Amblin, and then his 3 made-for-TV movies, now has the Sugarland Express, which is a story of a woman attempts to reunite her family by helping her husband escape prison and together kidnapping their son. But things don't go as planned. I wonder why. And basically, they kidnap a cop and go on a road trip with like 50 cops chasing them and trying to get to Sugarland, where their child is in a foster family. And this is starring American sweetheart Goldie Hawn and Dickless himself, Willie Matherton from Ghostbusters, and Ben Johnson from classic Westerns like Shane. And so basically, how I always like to start this segment is asking my guests why they wanted to come on for this episode. So, Rowan, what interested you in the Sugarland Express?
Well, I'm not going to retread what I've said before and said that you asked me to be on it because you did. But also this one especially, I was really excited about because when I saw that it was actually a feature film, I got very interested in it because you have not covered a non-made for TV feature that Spielberg has done on this show so far. So that alone made me very interested, and let me just say my interest and appetite was completely satiated by this one. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for Duel, that like I'm continuing and ranking these as I'm watching them. Mm-hmm. This was hands down easily my second favorite so far. Sure. Love Duel. But this film, it kind of captures that spirit of, America's an interesting place because America loves its cops, but it also loves people who take the law into their own hands. And it's just like, how does that work? There's just this rebellious spirit about America, all the way from the Revolutionary War and all through like our love for Westerns and like outlaws and stuff like that. And this film is very much like the precursor to something like Thelma and Louise, precursor to A Perfect World. You have, these people on the run. We love them. We want to watch them. And they have some veteran actor that they pulled out of nowhere to be a sheriff chasing after. Because, whether it's Harvey Keitel in Thelma and Louise, Clint Eastwood in A Perfect World, or Ben Johnson in this, you have that little formula there. Now, Rowan, what were some of the things that really stood out to you that you enjoyed about this film?
Well, so I feel like here we're getting to more of the Spielberg that the general movie-going audience knows. Mm-hmm. Because he is given like what seems to be a substantial budget. Of course, not a patch on what he'll get in the future, but mm-hmm. he's still proving himself, in the theatrical lane now. But he's also collaborating with John Williams now. This was their first official film collaboration, which is, of course, one of the great pairings of film history. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was just great. I wouldn't call this necessarily a notable Williams score, but just the essence of their partnership is what I would really take away from this. Mm-hmm. I also find that it's really interesting to paraphrase this film's Wikipedia article, that it's sort of an anomaly for both Goldie Hawn and Spielberg. Because Goldie Hawn is known primarily for her comedy work, mm-hmm. And Spielberg, doesn't typically do, crime or crime dramas, and yet both are sort of dipping their toes in here. But, the way that that's worded makes me I don't think gives it justice to the fact that this was very early in Spielberg's career. So he was just still sort of trying things out. It makes it sound like, he established himself as one of the biggest directors of all time, then did a crime drama, then went back to doing what he usually does, which when it comes to Spielberg, I feel like there isn't a thing that he quote unquote usually does. He is one of the most unique directors out there just in terms of his projects, which is why I feel that comment about being an anomaly is, at least when it comes to Spielberg, kind of unfair to say, because all of his films are, at least the ones that I've seen and the other ones that I haven't that I just know of, it just seems that, everything is an anomaly for him, therefore nothing is an anomaly, mm-hmm. which I just think is absolutely fascinating.
Well, and that's the thing too, because Spielberg definitely has some of the best versatility in terms of projects. Because this is a man, we're gonna just read off some of the films that are going to be coming up on Welcome to the Wasteland. So we have Jaws, which is a horror film. You have Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is hard science fiction kind of film. 1941, which is a war comedy. You have Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. You have E.T., more Indiana Jones. The Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, Always, Hook, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List. Come on, man. Right. people making any comments about like this really isn't what Spielberg does. It's like Spielberg does everything. Like Munich, and like he has thrillers. He does spy thrillers with like British spies. He did Munich, which is just like a really intense movie.
I haven't seen Munich yet.
You know, However, War of the Worlds.
Yeah, I am still watching along with this show, so I will get there.
Yeah. So like this is the kind of thing where it's just like this film, I feel like captures Spielberg in the sense that no matter what side of the line you're on in this film, there's something you can latch onto with them. Like William Atherton's character, like, you know, he just is a pro at being a dick, honestly, right. In things between Die Hard and Ghostbusters. And like, but like Goldie Hawn, you fall in love with her because you can't help it. You like Ben Johnson. They're on the opposite sides of this. That's the thing. I appreciate the complexity of like, they're like, you feel conflicted in terms of exactly who you want to line up with in this experience. You have this really important sense of family and trying to bring family together. And I feel like that's a big thing that Spielberg always does. Family's always a big part of it. Long before Vin Diesel wanted to act like he was the first ever person to bring family to cinema. Steven Spielberg, this is at the core of it is, you know, a woman trying to reconnect with her child. And to be honest, like William Atherton being that like deadbeat dad who winds up in prison. You know, right. It's that kind of thing. And you have some, and especially like as a follow-up to Duel, there's some chases in this that are really, really incredibly shot.
He's still on the high from the 90-minute car chase in Duel.
Yeah, because there's one particular car chase in this towards the beginning of the film. And what I loved about that scene was the complexity of it. Because you have the action going on, which is great camera work. There's intensity to it. But then you have character moments and humor all wrapped into it too, because you have the interactions between, was it Eugene and Clovis? What a couple of names.
Yeah.
They're going back and forth with each other. You have the arrestee in the back of the cop car, right, making all of his comments. And then you have the old couple on the side of the road they keep coming back to.
You just stay right there.
They stayed right there. They listened. And it's one of those kinds of things where it's like that scene in a nutshell just captures all the different kinds of things that Spielberg can do all at once and balance them and really make an engaging and interesting scene to really set the stage for this film, because like that's early on. That is literally what puts them at odds with the cops. And I don't think I've seen this many cops chasing somebody this end of Blues Brothers.
Right.
But what were some of the other things that stood out to you, Rowan?
Well, Eugene and Clovis are pretty bad criminals, not in terms of like the things that they do. I mean, sort of in terms of the things that they do. I mean, I feel like they're pretty tame in that way, but they are not great at what they do, which is like, it sort of becomes absurd at points. And I don't think this movie is intending to be a comedy. I know there are definitely comedic elements and lines here, but I feel like it's a lot of it just ends up being absurd in a really funny way. And it also makes it even more interesting that it is extremely loosely based on a true story. Yeah. To the point where the actual kidnapped patrolman has a cameo as one of the cops, which I think is just like really, really interesting and something that they might not actually do if the story was made today.
It is interesting.
Yeah. So aside from that, I just think that the situational comedy element, maybe I was just reading into it a little bit too much, but I actually really, really had fun with that part. I thought that it was like it was genuinely enjoyable, and I don't know if I would have had as much fun with the movie if, you know, if I hadn't been trying to find, you know, the fun, because there are some really like intense moments here. But I think a lot of the joy comes from like scenes where the car pulls up alongside a crowd of people who are like rooting for Lou Jean, and someone gives her like a pig that then pees on her immediately afterward, which is like how can that not be funny? Like that is hilarious. And yeah, so that was fun. I also watched this early this morning, so that might be part of it. Maybe I was just looking for something to be happy about. But yeah. So,
why am I up? But it's interesting because you have that shootout in the film. That's intense. Yeah. That is a very visceral scene. It's violent. And then there's one particular trap set towards the end of the film by the police that leads to a very intense and violent occurrence to one of the characters, and you're just like, it's like a gut punch at that point. And I feel like that's what this film accomplishes so well, is Steven Spielberg gets you to feel for these people,
right? And
like you can tell Clovis and Lou Jean are not like nefarious people. They're probably like desperate people just doing desperate things, and you know, probably Clovis a little bit more, but like you have that idea of like, these aren't like the kind of people that are going to be, that want to be lifelong criminals and enjoy the crime. And at this point they just want to have their family back, they want their child back. And I do think on some level it's like, how could they ever think that they were going to let them have that kid? And there's that one scene, and this is one of Ben Johnson's best, where one of the police officers like, can we like make this happen and get them that kid? It's like, no. Right. At this point, we can't let them have that kid at this point. Yeah. And it's just like, oh, because like, you know, his whole goal is to diffuse this situation and hopefully not end in people dying. And I think that's why these kinds of films need that character. But like Thelma and Louise needed that Harvey Keitel character. A Perfect World needed that Clint Eastwood character. You needed this Ben Johnson character because you have to have some kind of anchor for like the law enforcement aspect of this, because there needed to be some kind of compass to be like, we need to get to this point where there is at least not a horrible end to this whole entire thing. And I love Ben Johnson in this too. And this is interesting because like, I know Ben Johnson from Shane. He's like the big jerk guy that Shane gets into altercations with, who winds up having a change of heart towards the end of the film. And I'm named after Shane. So like, I've seen Shane quite a few times. And I remember seeing like, oh, Ben Johnson's in this, and like how they set him up, like hit that camera shot of him like walking out of the courtroom, that like high angle shot of him just like towering over. I'm like, ooh, that's how you introduce somebody. Right. And you have that character throughout this film really trying to play down the middle. And I think one of the most interesting, complex things about this is the relationship that they have with the police officer, Slide, played by Michael Sachs, who they have along with them the whole entire time. Right. And like, does he sympathize for them? Is he just doing this to keep himself alive? And like, there's real danger in this film, and there's consequences. And I feel like Spielberg's able to capture that, along with having that humor and some lightheartedness along the way.
Yeah, it you know, reminded me sort of what am I thinking of? I know there is a movie that this reminded me very clearly of, where a police officer or some officer of the like gets kidnapped or, you know, sort of taken hostage like this, and, you know, has to play along and ends up sort of working their way in with one of the with one of the people who is the weak link, who in this instance is Clovis. Yeah. I actually genuinely liked a lot of scenes with Slide and Clovis, because I feel like in any other situation, they honestly would have been pretty good friends. It's just this scenario has sort of screwed everything up for them.
Yeah, and I think what Goldie Hawn brings to this film is she has an alluring presence.
She's amazing here, I think.
Like you can tell why Clovis is with her, why Sly like gives into them, and like even early on in the film when they're driving and all the cops are behind them for the first time and she makes eye contact with the Sheriff Tanner, and just the way that Ben Johnson and Goldie Hawn look back at each other, like there's something special going on in this performance that Goldie Hawn has, and she is working that charisma that she has for great benefit in this film, because that character, that's the kind of character you get in trouble with,
right?
Because how do you resist? And that's the kind of vibe that you get, that like I don't think a whole lot of men can resist Lou Jean in this film. And like if you didn't have somebody like Goldie Hawn, that wouldn't work.
Exactly. Yeah, she has a sort of she's very good at putting on, she can flip on the innocence really quickly, and she can wear that mask for as long as she needs to. But under that, she is devious. Even though she may not be like extremely skilled at getting done what she wants to get done, she still knows exactly what she wants, and she'll basically do anything to get it. Which is like, I mean, she is, I think, a great character in that regard, and I think Goldie Hawn plays her perfectly.
Yeah, that early moment in the film where like Slide's taking her out of the car and holding her, and she slips the gun out and tosses it over to Clovis, is like, oh, she's playing this game.
Exactly.
And Clovis has to catch up.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the interesting dynamics, is like, I think she's a couple steps ahead of him. And William Atherton just plays that character perfectly, because like he's not like a straight up scumbag in this, like Ghostbusters or Die Hard, which that's the thing. I know William Atherton because he is a piece of crap in two of the biggest 80s movies. And like, I thought it was interesting seeing him in this role in a younger state in that. And, you have these four main actors here, and then you have all the other like character actors that fill out the cast. Like that old couple's great. Just how they interact with each other is fantastic. But I do like the things that keep this from being like a great film to me, and something that I absolutely love, is like narratively, it's like there's definitely like where this is going. And even though if like things like hit you in a certain way, you saw them coming. Like there's no way this didn't end the way that it was going to end. And you could see those beats coming along the way. But like when you have somebody like Steven Spielberg, that's why it works so well, is because he brings all of those things out of it to make it that much more special. And John Williams' score, I think, is a perfect score for this movie. It captures the atmosphere with like the specific instruments he's using and stuff like that to be able to get the music that they need, because like this feels like this feels like a Texas film. Like this is lawless versus the law, and this age-old conflict just plays off really well in this film.
I should give the score another listen, because I feel like I wasn't as focused on it as I probably should have been rather.
Yeah, because like, it's one of those kinds of things where it's like trying to remember it. Sure, it had like harmonica in it and stuff like that, and like It had that kind of feel to it. Like it's that kind of movie. But I guess, Rowan, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to share on Sugarland Express?
It's definitely one that I would check out again. I can't say that about Amblin or Savage. I was not a huge fan of Savage. Duel, I would for sure check out again. But I feel like this is Spielberg really settling into his groove and becoming the director that we know and love after getting all of this experience. Oh, I totally forgot about Something Evil, by the way. I don't feel like going back to that ever.
That's definitely the bottom of my list.
Exactly. Right? But he is becoming, he's getting the experience. He is becoming the director we know and love, and just like being here, watching along, even though the movies for the episodes that I haven't been on, it's just absolutely fascinating to see the evolution of one of the world's greatest filmmakers. I just think it's great, and it's just very, very interesting. And this, we are finally starting to see him, starting to get into the mainstream, which I think is excellent. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that next week. But
and
yeah,
this is the special box set Blu-ray set that I bought, and this has Duel,
nice,
and the Sugarland Express.
Very nice.
And this is one of the reasons I bought this, because I didn't have either of those. And then now I have a nice updated Blu-ray of Jaws, because I just had like a $3 DVD from the Princeton Record Exchange.
Right.
Had 1941 come in. E.T. Always, which I had never heard of, honestly.
Right.
Which will be interesting. And then, of course, as Jurassic Park. Lost World Jurassic Park.
Nice.
So, for those who want to get a nice box set with some serious Spielberg, check out this one. It's a really good one, and it's a nice box set and everything. So, shameless plugs to physical media.
Hell yeah, it needs it at this point, honestly.
Yeah, I heard about the death of Redbox. They might be
really?
Away. So. Because Redbox is getting into producing films now.
Weird. That just seems wrong. Somehow.
Vendetta, that new Bruce Willis movie for Redbox. Wow. So that's the thing. They're getting into elsewhere because they're probably going to start wrapping up the actual rental stations, which I'm just going to sit here and cry over all my DVDs and Blu-rays in 4K. Right. But it's okay. I'll always have Criterion Collection because they won't go away. Because yeesh. But to wrap things up, let's get some recommendations in here. So, Rowan, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
So I'm going to recommend a movie that has not been officially released in the mainstream yet. It will be released on Shudder on June 16th. This is Phil Tippett's film Mad God, his magnum opus that he spent 30 years working on. Now, if you don't know the name Phil Tippett, I don't blame you. He has not necessarily been at the forefront over the last maybe 50 or so years that he's been working in Hollywood, but he has done visual effects for Jurassic Park, for Return of the Jedi, in like Indiana Jones, some dinosaur movies. Yes, Twilight, Spiderwick Chronicles, The Force Awakens. So he has really gotten around. He also directed Starship Troopers 2, but we don't talk about that. So he has spent the last 30 years on and off working on this stop motion film that I can only describe as in one word as existential. This movie's insane. It doesn't necessarily make a ton of narrative sense, but it is not trying to go for that. And I do think I'm going to have to watch this a couple more times if I want to read into it in terms of themes. Some of them are clearer than others, but I do think that, this is absolutely fascinating. The story of how this was made is almost as interesting as the movie itself. So if you can, seek that out, it is really, really interesting. But the movie itself is just so bizarre, really, really visually fascinating. And you wonder where he gets all of these ideas from. If he has an idea flash in his mind, does he sketch it out immediately? Because that's what this movie feels like. Everything that he thinks of, he just throws on the screen without much thought for how it connects together. This is an exercise in sort of bringing ideas to life, and I think it might be one of the best representations of that I've ever seen.
Oh, the hellscape that he creates!
Right.
Oh my God.
It's amazing.
I wrote a review of this for SiftPop, so you all should keep an eye out for that when it comes out, because this is something bold, something impressive. Basically, what I heard when I looked it up is he came up with this idea to work on RoboCop, because like he's the one who did like the giant like walker thing with the stop motion, and then he worked on Jurassic Park and thought that stop motion was dead.
Right.
And then got convinced 20 years later to come back to this and somehow created this insane film. And this is like chef's kiss, crown jewels of why Shudder is such a great streaming service, is gems like this that you'll never see anywhere else.
Right.
Now, my recommendation, now for something completely different. This is a new film, Happening. So for those that saw Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which that was one of my top 3 films of 2020. This is also about a young woman trying to find an abortion. Very topical
right
today. This takes place in 60s France when that was still illegal then.
Could not be more different than today.
Except
right.
Be very similar.
Aside from that, the setting, of course. Yeah.
Well, that's the interesting thing, because this is getting a lot of comparisons to Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which I thought somebody compares like that seemed like a relic, where it's like, how could this still be a thing? And then you watch this and it takes place in the 60s. You're like, oh my God, this is still a thing. Why is this still a thing?
Right.
And, however, wherever you fall on the political spectrum of this is a beautifully shot film and a moving and intense experience. And it's something special. And now something even more completely different, which I just wrote a Wasteland Vintage Roadshow of this because I rewatched this on Sunday night, because every Sunday night I do a little movie night with my fiance, soon to be wife, and we just watch some of our movies. And we rewatched The Naked Gun and from the Files of Police Squad. And Leslie Nielsen was an absolute American treasure. And his extremely deadpan responses to everything. Cuban? No, Dutch Irish.
The Naked Gun will be a part of my hopefully first annual film marathon, 12-hour marathon that I'm having with my friends later this summer. We're going to watch one film from each decade from the 60s to today, and Naked Gun is the one that has been chosen for the 70s. So I am very excited. I have never seen it. So,
oh my God, you will have so many jokes stuck in your head for days.
I love it.
Oh my God. And I will not ruin, there's a whole paragraph in my article with a bunch of wordplay alluding to all the best jokes in the movie without ruining the jokes. God, now I'm just laughing, thinking about all the jokes in this movie. It's so dumb and it's so great. It's a Abraham Zucker film, so that's what you should expect. But those are our recommendations for all of you, and that's a wrap here on Welcome to the Wasteland this week. Rowan, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, as always.
And check out all the wonderful things that Rowan's doing and what we'll be doing together, Rowan and the Wasteland. And I'm sure at some point I'll be back on the Lenient Critic podcast as well. Absolutely. And Rowan's just going to keep popping up on here. So,
yeah.
But thank you, Rowan, as always. And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.